أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So as you know, we're going to talk about hadith number 19 from Nawawi's collection of 40 hadith. And we have covered a couple of things in this hadith so far. So we have covered the biography of the narrator. So if you can tell me the name of the narrator of this hadith.
Abdullah ibn Abbas.
Yes, very good. Excellent. So that is the name of the narrator. Now, I'm just going to ask you a few quick questions just to see if you can, remember any, main things about him. So can you tell me what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this companion's name? What is he known for? As in, he's known for a few things, but the main thing or the thing that he's known for the most?
Tafsir.
Excellent, yes. So explanation of the Quran, the verses of the Quran, and that is because the Prophet ﷺ made a special dua for him. Okay. How old was he when he died?
If nobody is answering, 72.
Yeah, he was about 71 when he died because he was born 3 years before Hijrah and he died 68 years after Hijrah. Okay. Any idea how many ahadith he narrated?
1,060.
Yeah, 1,660. So he ranks amongst the people, amongst the, first few people who have narrated the maximum number of ahadith. So he is up there in that list. Okay, so that's about the narrator. So we started the hadith, and I'm just going to ask you a few things about some of the parts of the hadith that we covered, just to recap. But I want to recap through, what you remember. So the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, one day I was riding behind the Prophet. Abdullah ibn Abbas is narrating this, and he says, one day I was riding behind the Prophet ﷺ. What do you derive from these words? Farzana, it's nice to see you attending as well, mashallah.
The quotation of the hadith was directly to this young person, Abdullah bin Abbas.
Yeah, so what I was trying to refer to is, so that is one thing that we learn from this, that this is a hadith that Abdullah bin Abbas has directly heard from the Prophet ﷺ, because we said that he was very young. And so although he has narrated a lot of ahadith, they are not directly from the Prophet ﷺ, but they are, you could say, like in proxy. So he has heard them through other Sahaba and then he has narrated them. But this particular one is one of the few ahadith that he has narrated directly from the Prophet ﷺ, and we know that because he was with the Prophet ﷺ when he heard these words, and that is through this, the way he starts the hadith by saying that one day I was riding behind the Prophet ﷺ. So one of the things we learned from these words last time that I mentioned was that we get a fiqh ruling, you could say, from this, is that it is permissible for two people to ride on one animal if the animal has the strength to carry them and if it does not cause discomfort or difficulty to the animal. So it is okay for two people to ride on one animal. So you see, when you read a hadith, the scholars of hadith, they try and derive as much information and as much lessons and benefits from that hadith as they can. So sometimes, it might be something obvious, sometimes it might not be something very clear, but the scholars, they will derive whatever benefit they can derive from these words of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so the first thing that Abdullah ibn Abbas said is, "O young man." So this is what he's quoting the Prophet ﷺ as saying now. Yes. So now these are the words of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ starts by saying, "O young man." So I want you to tell me two main things that we learn from just these words. When he says, I think the word is ya ghulam in Arabic. "O young man."
The first thing is to call someone or call audience to get the maximum attention of the audience.
Excellent. So the first thing is that when he says ya ghulam, it immediately alerts the person who's being addressed, and he realizes that, okay, this conversation is directed at me, or whatever the person is about to say is for me, or it's directed at me. So that's very good. So it catches a person's attention. Second,
paying attention to the young people for tarbiyah.
Excellent. Yes. So we see that the Prophet ﷺ, he gave a lot of importance and attention to the youth around him at that time. And we see that the youth at that time was very, there's a stark contrast between the youth then and the youth now. Does anybody know how old Abdullah bin Abbas was during the narration of this hadith?
10 to 13 years.
Yes, very good. He was very young. He was just, between the ages of about... So he hadn't even really reached puberty. But you can see that this is all a process of tarbiyah. And when the Prophet ﷺ is giving these young men or these young boys so much attention, it is to shape them, or to start shaping them so that as they grow with these morals and values and principles that they learn and they pick up from the Prophet ﷺ. And so they use these morals as they grow, into adulthood. So, although generally our approach is, oh, he's just a child, let me pay attention to the adults. But the Prophet ﷺ is paying attention to the youth, because the youth is going to be tomorrow's generation, and what he teaches them today is going to be very precious. And because they are still so impressionable, this is the best time to give them, you could say like the cream of knowledge, and this is what is going to shape them in the future. And so there's many youth at that time that have been mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ paid a lot of attention to. And I mentioned some of them last time, such as right now we're talking about Ibn Abbas. There's also Ibn Mas'ud, there was Nu'man Ibn Bashir, and various other people, various other companions who were very young, and the Prophet ﷺ paid a lot of attention to them. And you see, especially in the case of Abdullah ibn Abbas, the lessons he learns from the Prophet ﷺ, he takes them seriously. So, generally, like I said to you, that we have this idea that, oh, he's too young to understand such heavy concepts, or, something like that. So our 10-year-olds and our 13-year-olds are able to study maths and physics and geography and science. That's not heavy for them. But when it comes to the deen, we really water it down and we say, oh, this is too much, let's just baby steps, So we really underestimate their ability to comprehend and to absorb and to literally like imbibe and like take these things in and grow up with them. So really, if you were to give them this information and speak to them at their level, but give them beneficial information, this is really something that will benefit them, and it is not something beyond them. It is not something that is going to go over their heads. It is something that they can easily understand and absorb and act on. So the next words that the Prophet ﷺ says are, I shall teach you some words of advice. Now, again, I want you to tell me two main lessons that we learn from these words. I shall teach you some words of advice.
We should know the level of the audience before we give dawah. We should not give more or less to them, and the dawah should be brief, easy to remember. He can act on it and pass on the information that the person has received.
Okay, so just to summarize that and to just simplify it. When the Prophet ﷺ says, I shall teach you some words, first of all, you see it's very important that the Prophet ﷺ interjects this word some. Okay, so in the Arabic,
he does not waste time, unnecessary time.
Yes, that's right. I'm just going to come to that in a second. So the first thing is that the Prophet ﷺ says, Inni u'allimuka kalimat. Now, kalimat just means some words. Okay, so the important thing here is that when you sort of get someone's attention and you say that you're about to speak to them about something, for a child of that age, he's between 10 and 13, it can be a bit overwhelming, it can be intimidating, and it can almost make them scared to think that oh, I don't know what he's about to tell me and how long this is going to take. This is going to be like some lengthy conversation. So by saying some words, he immediately puts the boy's heart at ease that this is not going to be lengthy, it's not going to be heavy, and it's not going to be an overload. It's just something small, brief, concise, and he immediately feels comfortable and receptive. Okay, so he's ready now to listen and pay attention. So the same way, if you were to call your child inside and say, come here, I want to speak to you, and you tell them to sit down and you say, look, I really need to have this conversation with you. The child is most likely going to sit with you for maybe a minute, and then after a minute he's going to switch off, and then you're going to be talking and you're thinking that you're speaking to your child, but you're actually just speaking to yourself. So brevity is key, because it helps to get the message across and it keeps the audience's attention. So whereas if you were to call your child and say, can you just give me a couple of minutes of your time? I just needed to say something to you quickly. So when you say that, they generally tend to stay switched on because they know, oh, this is going to be really quick. So, I can afford to pay attention to 2 minutes of what my mom wants to say. So these are lessons that we get from, these words and these ahadith. So the first thing is that when he says some words, it immediately puts the listener's heart at ease that this is not going to be lengthy, it's going to be short and brief. Secondly, like Rabina or whoever it was who answered said, that this shows us that he's riding with him on a camel or riding animal, and he uses this time to do something beneficial for this child. So what it teaches us is that don't waste your time and use every moment that Allah has blessed you with, use it in his obedience, in something beneficial. And like I said to you last time, that if you believe that you will stand in front of Allah and you will be accountable and you will answer for the way you spent your time, for what you did with your life, then you will be that's how conscientious you will be in how you spend your time. So the more you are aware of this reality that one day you will stand in front of Allah, the more you will be conscientious of how you spend that time, because you constantly have this thing in your mind that I have to answer for this time, and you can't, and also if you believe in akhirah, then you don't have time to waste, because you know that every moment is precious and I need to use every time in my benefit, so that it's for me and not against me. Okay, yes. So somebody has mentioned that to keep salah short so that the little younger children don't get tired. That is again something that the Prophet ﷺ also used to take into account. If there were women and children, he wouldn't prolong the prayer too much so that it's not heavy on them. So these are the two main things I wanted you to remember from these words: brevity and using your time, in a beneficial way. So, when you're going for, let's say you're driving to the supermarket with your child, or you're walking from A to B, or you're going to go, or you're cooking, for example, or you're ironing, it's a good time to use that time to either speak to your child about something beneficial, or, revise some Quran with them. I mean, always try to use that time that you have with them in a positive way, rather than to just, leave it. The next words that the Prophet ﷺ said are, be mindful of Allah. And like we said, that the Arabic is ihfadillah, which literally means that protect Allah. And we clarified last time, right, that Allah does not need anyone's protection. So what are the three main things that come under the category of ihfadillah? When the Prophet ﷺ said ihfadillah, what is he referring to?
It's to fulfill Allah's obligations.
Yes, so the rights of Allah.
Yeah, and to avoid the prohibitions.
Okay, so that's the halal and haram. Yes, so that's fulfilling Allah's commands and keeping away from His prohibitions. Yes.
And to attach ourselves to His commandments.
So that is still the same thing, the halal and haram.
So, to be mindful of Him.
So what does being mindful of Him include? It includes doing what He has commanded and avoiding what He has forbidden. That's one thing. The second thing...
Fear of Allah.
Sorry? Fear of Allah?
Qadr.
Accept the qadr. No, I can't really accept that. So the other two things that I'm looking for is being aware of the limits set by Allah. And again, the limits is very similar to, doing what Allah has commanded and avoiding what Allah has forbidden, but specifically the limits set by Allah. That's the second thing. And the third thing is fulfilling Allah's rights. We're going to actually, talk about the rights of Allah again today, but I just wanted to ask, does anybody know what is the right of Allah on us?
There is a hadith, Sister Fakrunisa, I mean, where the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the slave and our rights on him.
Yeah.
I think Umar radiallahu anhu was riding in the horse when he came to know about this hadith. Allah's rights over the slaves is that He promises Jannah if we are on the top path of Tawheed. And the slave's right towards Allah is only to worship Him alone.
Yes, that's right. So Allah's right on us is that we worship Him without associating any partners with Him. So we basically worship Allah with Tawheed, without shirk. And if we do that, then our right on Allah is that He will not punish us. I will try and post this hadith on the group, inshallah. And this hadith was reported by Mu'adh ibn Jabal. The reason I didn't actually post this hadith was because, when Mu'adh heard this hadith, when he heard these words from the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, shall I give the glad tidings to the people that as long as you don't associate partners with Allah, Allah will not punish you? And the Prophet ﷺ said, do not tell them this good news, for they will depend on it alone. And this is narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. But inshallah, I will post this hadith on the group. So it's important to know these things. These are very basic things that we should know about our deen. Our rights on Allah, Allah's rights on us. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. And as you know, I told you many other similar kind of phrases in the Quran. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ. So, and I told you what this kind of sequence of words equates to. So can anyone tell me what it really sort of like, what is the concept that Allah is giving us when Allah says, for example, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, or where the Prophet ﷺ is saying, be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. The main concept, the main idea that you're getting through this kind of structure. Anyone?
How much we give, we receive.
Yeah, so basically the way we act with the deen of Allah, or the way we treat the deen of Allah, that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will treat us. Okay? So the importance that you give to the deen of Allah, that is the amount of importance that will be given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very kind and He's very generous. And if anything, He gives us more than we deserve. We do a little bit and Allah gives us so much more in return. But yes, this is the idea, the main idea that I need you to understand and, grasp and remember, that the way you deal with the deen of Allah, that is how you will be dealt with. So, for example, I think I gave this example last time. So, when I see my children escaping their sunnahs, for example, they're trying to do the bare minimum that they have to absolutely do in their deen, then I tell them that, then you will get the bare minimum in return. So when it comes to our dunya, we don't settle for bare minimum, right? We want the best. We want the best husband, the best house, the best car, best children, best life, best body. We wouldn't settle for just a basic, for example, just a basic car, or, as long as, my health is just basically good, it's all right. We wouldn't settle for things like that. We would say, no, I want to make sure that I am, 100% in this or in that when it comes to our dunya things. So, if you want 100%, you give 100% and you will receive 100%. So what you put in, like you said, is what you will get out. And like they say in English, what you sow, so shall you reap. Now, the last thing that I want to ask you from last time's dars is, what are the two main ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us?
Dunya protection and spiritual protection.
Excellent. So, the first way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us is in all our dunya needs. So whether it's protecting our children, protecting our homes, our wealth, our health, even protecting, our progeny in the future. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Kahf, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. So it is said in the tafsir that this was the grandparents who were righteous, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected them because of the righteous deeds of the grandparents. So if you are a righteous person, your righteousness will impact the generations that come after you, not just your children, but your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, everybody. It's like a trickle-down effect. Everybody will benefit from that khair that you did. And so that's why, there is so much barakah in khair, in anything good that you do. There is so much barakah in it, because it literally, it goes down, it passes on, and it keeps going and it keeps going. So there is a lot of barakah in righteousness, in good deeds, in amalus salih. And, the Sahaba used to say that when we disobey Allah, we see the effects of that in our spouse or in our riding beast. And so when you want everything to go right in your life, and you want everything to be good in your life, the way to do that is by I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think is the way to do that?
Ihsan.
No, I've covered this in the previous hadith actually, but okay. So if you remember we talked about the effects of taqwa. So taqwa is basically, trying to obey Allah and keep away from disobeying Allah, and basically protecting yourself from Allah's anger, right? So basically obedience to Allah. The more you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you try and improve your ibadah, and you try and improve your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the better your affairs will be, and the smoother everything will be. So if you want things to go well, like you want the best crops to grow in your garden, or you want, let's say, you have a car and you're hoping that this car doesn't give you trouble, or you get married and you're hoping that your marriage turns out good, or you've had a child and you're hoping that this child is going to turn out to be righteous and good. So all your dunya affairs that you want should go perfectly well. The way to do that is by obeying Allah and by having more taqwa of Allah. The more taqwa you have, the better your affairs will be, and the smoother everything will go. It's like a direct connection. It's like directly proportional, to each other. So that's the physical protection that we get from Allah. And then there's spiritual protection. And the spiritual protection is more important than the physical protection. And it is more critical than the physical protection. Because remember, if you lose something in the dunya, or something goes wrong with any of your dunya things, it's just temporary, right? Let's say something happens to your husband, he dies. I know this is a big thing. I know it can change a person's life. It's a huge hit. But at the end of the day, this difficulty or sadness, it will last how many years? 20 years? 10 years? 30 years? But eventually it will stop, right? When you leave the dunya, you will come out of this difficulty. But if you face a problem or a fitna with your deen, this is something that will impact you for eternity. And so that's why this is more crucial. So protection in the deen is basically the distinguishing factor between Jannah and Nar. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects your deen and He protects your iman, that is basically, you could say, protecting your akhirah. And if you stay on iman, then inshallah that is Jannah for you. And if you come out of your iman and you go into disbelief, then there is nar for you. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from that. So you can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection of our iman is so important. And the thing is that a lot of the times we think that these things are really up to us. And yes, while we do have the freedom of choice to work on our iman and to try and preserve it, but we constantly have to ask Allah's help in this. We can't do anything on our own, right? Even to obey Allah, even to worship Allah, we have to ask for Allah's help. And we will see in this hadith that this is one of the key things that the Prophet ﷺ teaches Ibn Abbas. And this is something that this is really going to be the main topic of today, is asking for Allah's help. So with all of this, I have just sort of like recapped on what we did last time. So I can really just move on very quickly, but I just like to recap just to make sure that we're all on, we all have grasped the lessons from last time, and then we can build on top of that what we will take today. If I just rush into today, sometimes I feel that once you heard the dars once, that's good, and then it helps to just listen to like a summarized version of that dars one more time to just consolidate everything you've learned. So I know that it takes time, but I think that it is important to take this time and do this. Okay. So the next part of the hadith that we come to now is the words of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, "Be mindful of Allah and you will find him in front of you." So again, the same words, being mindful of Allah and you will find him in front of you. Now, first of all, what does it mean when we say be mindful of Allah? It's not a trick question. We just answered it. You can just... Can I hear from any of the people who, any new people that I have not heard from or who have not answered? So when we say be mindful of Allah, what are we referring to?
Obey Allah?
Yes, very good. Obey Allah. So basically, like we said, be conscientious about the limits set by Allah. Don't cross the boundaries that Allah has set. Fulfill Allah's rights and, obey Allah's commands and avoid his prohibitions, right? So this is basically, preserving the sanctity and the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is basically being mindful of Allah, right? Now, when we say, okay, so just to, sometimes I think you understand concepts better when you take opposites. So somebody who is not mindful of Allah, so you have two people, right? You have one who is mindful of Allah and you have one who is not mindful of Allah. Both people are going towards their akhirah, right? They're going towards their end, their death, and they will meet Allah. Both of them are going to, you could say stand in front of Allah, or, they will have the same end, death and day of judgment. The one who is mindful of Allah is on a journey to meet Allah, but he is focused, okay? And he's aware of what he is doing and where he is heading and what he is heading towards. So he's focused, he's aware, he's alert, and he is trying his best to walk on the path in such a way that he gets off at his destination in good shape, you could say, right? The person who is not mindful of Allah is also on the same journey. He's also going to the same end, but he is just going willy-nilly, okay? He doesn't have direction, he doesn't have focus, he doesn't have objectives, he's just like all over the place. So he's also heading towards the same end, but because he's not mindful of Allah, he is just, just wandering. And you can see that this person, when he gets out, when he reaches his destination, he's not going to be in very good shape, because rather than being conscientious of what is pleasing and displeasing to Allah, he was just following his desire. He was not mindful of Allah. He was just mindful of himself and what he wants and what makes him happy. So when he gets out at this destination, he's going to find a rude surprise. So he's not going to be in good shape. Whereas the person who was focused, who knew what he's doing, where he's going, he's going to have a different result. He's going to be relaxed and happy when he gets to his destination, because he did his hard work that he was supposed to do. Now, when we say you will find him in front of you, what do you understand from that? Anyone? So when we say that you will find him in front, or when the Prophet ﷺ said you will find him in front of you, what do you understand from this?
Allah will be always there for you.
Yes, very good. So basically, this is what again we talked about when we talked about the fruits of taqwa. This is the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. So the more you have taqwa, the more you are conscientious and mindful of Allah, and you're constantly thinking, if I do this, is this going to make Allah angry or happy? If I do this, will Allah be happy with me or will Allah be angry with me? If I do this, have I disregarded Allah's limits and His boundaries, or have I kept within Allah's boundaries? So you're constantly conscientious and aware that it's almost like, it's like constantly being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically. So you can imagine somebody like that, they will have a closeness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's almost like when you say that, it's like Allah is with you. Now, obviously, we know that where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's the basic aqidah question.
He's everywhere.
No.
Allah with you.
No. So somebody's answered, okay, so he is not
He's on arsh.
not on his arsh, but he is above his arsh. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above his arsh. And he is not everywhere, and he is not physically with us. But when we say that Allah is with us, like the Prophet ﷺ, he gave consolation to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu when they're both in the cave, right? During Hijrah. And he says to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana. So when he's saying that don't be sad, Allah is with us, he doesn't mean that Allah is physically with us. What does he mean? When any of us say that, oh, Allah is with us, or you're having a conversation and you say, that Allah is with us. What do you mean when you say that?
He's spiritually help us. In us, like more spiritually, more near us in our thoughts, in our things, guiding us.
Yes, he is doing all those things, but when you say Allah is with us, what exactly? There's one specific thing that I need you to understand.
It's a yaqeen that He's there to protect you.
Yes, he is there to protect you, and he is doing all those things. He's helping you, he is watching you, he's doing all of that, yes. But what exactly do we mean?
Allah is saying Qadir is everything.
So when we say that Allah is with us, or Allah is, with someone in a certain situation, we mean that Allah is with us by His knowledge, okay, through His knowledge. So you could say Allah is aware of every situation, even what is happening under a rock, on a dark night, in a dark place. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of everything that is happening. So when we say that, yes, that's right. Somebody just said that He knows everything about it. So Allah is with us through His knowledge, or with His knowledge. And, once you are aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your situation, He knows where you are, what you are doing, and He is aware of your circumstances, it's almost like takes away all your worry, and it takes away all your anxiety and all your, you could say your anticipation, because it's almost like you feel relaxed, because you think, oh, Allah knows my situation, Allah knows what I really want, where I'm stuck, what my situation is, what I need. So once you know that Allah is with you, and Allah is not with you physically, but Allah is with you through His knowledge, then you just become relaxed. So now when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you through His knowledge, and if you are somebody who has taqwa, who's constantly conscientious about Allah, who constantly remembers that Allah is, Allah never comes out of the equation for you. Okay, so whatever you do, it is dictated by the boundaries set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then like some of you mentioned, Allah will steer you away from whatever is harmful, and Allah will take you towards those things which are beneficial and which are good for you. So that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, okay? Because it's almost like, in every situation, it's like it's Allah's presence that is helping us get through everything. And of course, you leave your affairs up to Allah. I'm going to tell you like a really, it's actually a long story, but I'm going to shorten it and tell you just to try and explain the concept that I'm trying to get through to you. I think stories is a very good way to drive in concepts. So I'm going to give this a try. So there were these two women, and they were looking for a house. They were looking for a flat, and they were trying to, find a flat to share with someone, because they were not wealthy. They were, you could say labor class, working class women, and, earning very basic amount of money. And so they were looking through the classifieds in the newspaper, and they came across this advert for a house somewhere. So they took the directions or the address in the advert, and they turned up at this house. So they rang the bell, and this is in the Middle East, by the way. The story happened in the Middle East, and this is a true story. I'm not making this up. They rang the bell, and this Arab guy opened the door, and they said to him that we've come based on the ad that you placed in the newspaper, and we'd like to see the room that you are renting out, and we're interested in renting out this room. So this man he's really confused, and he said to them, he said I don't know what you're talking about. He said, you've come to the wrong house, or you're mistaken. So they said, no. They said, this is exactly the location that's given in the ad. And they said that we are at the right place. This was exactly the address that we found in the ad. So he's really confused, and he said to them, he said, well, I didn't place an ad, and I'm not renting out a room. But he said, I think he felt sorry for them that, they've come all this way, and they were very disappointed. And so he said to them, he said, okay, he said, you can come, and you can work for us, and you can stay with us. So he was a family guy. He had a wife, kids, and everything. And a little while later, he just felt that it just didn't feel right to him that they're just staying like that. So he said to one of them, he said that he said, how about I marry you, and then it will be a more appropriate way for you to stay in this house then. And so he married her, and she lived with him for a while, and a few months, a few years later, something happened, and he passed away. And when he passed away, he actually, if I remember correctly, he was actually the owner of that building that he was living in. So when he passed away, I think he had bequeathed that building to this woman, to his wife. So like I said, it's a long story, but just to cut it short, if we go back to the beginning of the story, there was no ad in the paper. Okay, and this woman, she ends up becoming the owner of a building. She just went to look for a room, and she's now the owner of a building based on no ad in the paper. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you and He protects you and He takes care of your affairs, these are the kind of things that happen. Okay, they are things which sometimes you can't even explain or understand. And I'm sure all of you, if you look into your lives, you will find stories and incidents where you think that I don't even know how I managed to do this, or I don't even know how this happened, or I don't know how I managed to get this. But, you will find those places in your life where you almost feel like you didn't even have anything to do with it and this thing happened, right? So this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking care of your affairs. It is it's a very amazing way that things will happen for you. And of course, that doesn't mean that you don't make any effort from your side, but as long as you make the effort and you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're conscientious and your taqwa and everything is in place, then you have nothing to worry about. And that's why, it's so important to know that Allah is on my side. If Allah is on your side, you have nothing to worry about then. So when we talk about the special closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the believer, we're talking about Allah's help, His protection and His support. And this is what it means when the Prophet ﷺ is saying that be mindful of Allah and you will find Him in front of you. So now the Prophet ﷺ has told him two basic things now. He has told him that be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. And now he has said to him, be mindful of Allah and you will find Him in front of you. And that is again referring to the special protection and closeness that is granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those people who have taqwa. Okay, and taqwa is again this mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of being conscientious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, doing righteousness, doing the things which are pleasing to Allah, avoiding the things which are displeasing to Allah. So you get the special care from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And like I said, when you feel inside that Allah is with me, Allah is helping me, Allah is protecting me, nobody could have done this for me, Sometimes, let's say you're driving and you almost had a really bad accident and you got saved and you think, Allah saved me. Or, you come out of a building and then that building goes up in flames and you think, I was there 2 minutes ago. I could have been there when this fire went up, and Allah protected me and Allah saved me. So it's just these kind of things, when you see them and you see them over and over again and you realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after you, He's taking care of you. And, you get this sakina and this tranquility, because it's like, you feel it inside you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking care of me and my affairs. So this is what it means when you say that Allah is in front of me. And as you know, the Hadith Qudsi where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my servant does not draw near to me with anything more loved by me than the religious duties I have imposed upon him. And that is the fara'id. So the main way to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through the fara'id. And my servant continues to draw near to me with supererogatory works so that I shall love him. So with the nawafil and the sunan, you get closer to Allah. So the main way you get close to Allah is through the fara'id. And then once you are close to Allah, you continue to get closer and closer to Allah by doing the sunan and the nawafil, by doing extra things. When I love him, I am his hearing with which he hears, his seeing with which he sees, his hand with which he strikes, and his foot with which he walks. So everything you do, once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once you are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything you do is, you could say, within the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you won't hear anything bad, you won't do anything bad. It's almost like a shield between you and anything that is bad or evil or wrong. And that shield is through the closeness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the minute you move far away from Allah and you let go of this conscientiousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when this shield falls and you fall into haram, and you fall into things which are displeasing to Allah, or you fall into things which which are displeasing to Allah, which are basically going against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah says, were he to ask something of me, I would surely give it to him. And were he to ask me for refuge, I would surely grant him it. And so at this stage, it's almost like, you enter the category of people whose du'as are answered. And it doesn't necessarily mean, if your dua is answered, that Allah loves you or Allah is happy with you. I know we generally think that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. For example, Iblis, he said to Allah, give me respite until the day of judgment, and I will lead these people astray. And Allah, this is like a dua, right? It's a request that he made to Allah, and Allah accepted it. And this is Iblis. Similarly, you can have a disbeliever who is in a problem, and he says, oh, Allah help me, and if you help me, I will stop doing all the bad things, and I'm going to become good. And Allah helps him, but he goes back to being bad. So these are examples of people who are not necessarily, good or righteous, but their request is granted. But generally, a righteous person, his dua is accepted. And that is, like Allah says that if he were to ask me of something, I would surely give it to him. So, when you have taqwa and when you are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are more likely to have your dua answered than if you are far from Allah. And you have stories of people. We covered one of the narrators in one of the previous hadith where, he used to recite so much Quran. He would complete the recitation of the entire Quran in one night, in one rak'ah. And, when there was like a huge fire, they called him and they asked him to do something because they were not able to put this fire out. And he was just walking towards it and moving his hands, and the fire was moving away. So, these are special things that, the closer you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more beloved you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more likely it is for your dua to be accepted. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last part that I want to cover today is a bit long, but I'm going to try and summarize it and give it to you, inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ said the next thing he said is, if you ask of Allah. Now this is the part that was really the main thing that I wanted to talk about today, and this is you could say an integral part of this hadith. What is one word that we use when we talk about asking Allah? Anybody? What are we talking about here? So the word I'm looking for is dua. Okay, so when you ask Allah, you are basically, it's referring to dua or requesting Allah for something. And when the Prophet ﷺ said, if you ask of Allah, it's almost as if he is eliminating asking anyone else. It's almost like he is while he's encouraging you to ask Allah, without saying it, he's discouraging you from asking anyone else. And there is a hadith in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ, he took an oath from a number of companions. Some of them were Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Abu Dhar, Thawban, and he took an oath from them that they would never ask for anything from anyone. And We're not talking about we're not even talking about clear things that you would not ask anyone. Like, for example, let's say I am unable to have a child, so I really want to have a baby. So I go and ask somebody and say, can you please do something so I can have a baby? Or, for example, let's say, I'm talking about like ibadah. We're not even talking about ibadah. He's talking about general things. He's saying that he took an oath that you will not ask anyone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it is said that if any of these companions who gave this oath to the Prophet ﷺ, if they dropped their stick or their camel reins, they would never ask anyone to pick it up for them, but would get it themselves. So they would mount off their riding animal and they would pick up whatever they've dropped and then get back onto their animal, because they wouldn't ask anyone for anything to this extent. And asking people is something extremely discouraged. Even when it's a necessity, it is discouraged. When it is absolutely needed, you have to do it, but it is something that our deen discourages. As much as possible, don't ask anyone, just ask Allah. These are little things that we think are little, but they're actually big when it comes to tarbiyah. And we think that we only need to do tarbiyah of our children and we only need to teach our children these manners, but it is so important for us to learn these manners and for us to inculcate these habits in our life. So, for example, when you're sitting on the dinner table, it's such a common thing for people to say, can you grab me a spoon? Can you pass me that bottle? Can you pass me the salad? Can you do this? Can you do that? And this is something that we should avoid. If you want the salad, just try and go forward and get the salad, or get up and come round the other side of the table and get the salad. If you want a spoon or a fork, get up and get it yourself. And at the core of this matter is the fact that people don't like to be asked. If you think about it yourself, when people ask you for favors, you don't really like it. None of us like to be asked. We'll do it. We won't say no, we'll do it. But we'd rather they didn't ask us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to be asked. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants us to ask Him. And there was a saying, if I can find it. Yeah. Ibn Rajab quotes Ibn al-Sumak as saying, "Do not ask one who flees from your requests," talking about people, "but instead ask the one who has ordered you to ask of him." So he's basically saying, don't ask the people. They're trying to run away from you. They're trying to avoid you asking them. Ask Allah instead. Little things like we'll say to someone, can you drop me off? Can you pick this up for me? Can you do such and such for me? So I understand sometimes it is a necessity, it is a need, you're stuck. I will give you the rulings for that later on, inshallah. But generally, as much as it is possible, try and avoid it. Paying some money and getting a taxi will be more honorable than to ask somebody for a favor and say, can you just drop me here? Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? I'll take some of these questions when we're done, inshallah. So this is one of the main things that he tells Abdullah ibn Abbas. If you ask of Allah. And the thing that we need to understand ourselves and then explain it to our children is that, as Ibn Rajab points out, there are three main benefits of only asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are three main reasons, you could say, why we only ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One is, and all of this is to perfect our tawheed, okay? The first thing is that you degrade yourself by asking someone for something. Why? Because when you ask someone, you stand the risk of them saying no and, declining your request. Or they could say yes. Okay, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never say no, right? We know that if we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will always grant us our request, and He will grant it to us in one of three ways. Does anybody know what are those three things that Allah does when we make dua to Him? He never rejects our dua.
Either He grants it before our hands are, this has been quoted, before we lower our hands, it's been answered, or He postpones our dua and for a later period, or for something better than what we have asked. If not answered on the day of judgment, we will see it as good deeds. It will be answered in the form of deeds.
Okay, so just to simplify that, so the first thing that can happen when you make dua is that your dua is answered. The second thing that can happen is that it is delayed. Okay, so it will be answered, but it will be delayed. And the third response to your dua is that that thing is not good for you, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace it with something else. So one of the options, instead of saying that it is delayed, is we could say that it will be saved for you on the day of judgment as some reward. And the third option is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove a similar harm from you. For whatever you are asking, Allah will remove something similar from you. So your dua is never rejected when you ask Allah. But when you ask people will sometimes just say no, and sometimes they'll say yes. So don't degrade yourself and ask people. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, when you ask someone, they may or may not be capable of fulfilling your request, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is ala kulli shayin qadir. He has all the treasures of the world. So why don't we ask Him? Why do we ask people? All we need to do is we need to turn to Allah and we need to ask Him. And the third thing that we learn from, asking only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when you ask someone, they may or may not have your best interest at heart. So sometimes people will grant your request based on what they are getting out of it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He only has your best interest, right? And Allah will grant it to you if it is good for you, and if it is not, He will replace it with something else for you. So, this is a very strong bond and relationship that we have with Allah. And the most important thing to remember is, there was a man, and he came to a scholar, and he said that I've been making dua, day and night for such a long time, and my dua just won't get answered. And so the scholar said to him, he said, keep knocking on Allah's door until Allah opens it. And so there was a woman, she was also, I think, like a pious woman. She heard this, and she said that, may Allah forgive him for what he said, referring to what the scholar had said to this man. And she said, because she said, there is no door between the slave and Allah. So, you're not knocking on a door. There is no barriers between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a direct connection that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why dua is such a huge ibadah. It is such a, it is one of, like, you could say, one of the greatest ibadahs that we have. And that is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There were some men, they were standing outside Maymun ibn Mahran. He saw some people outside the door of one of the princes. You know how people go to the ruler to present their request? Let's say they have a debt and they're not able to pay it, or they have some situation and they need a solution. So they're all like crowding around outside the prince's, majlis, waiting to, present their request to him. And he said a very beautiful thing, Maymun ibn Mahran. He said, the one who has a need from the ruler has a barrier in front of him, because they're all standing outside the door of the prince, of the this majlis of the prince. But the houses of the most merciful are open. So one of you should go to the masjid and pray 2 rakahs and ask of him his needs. And this is such a beautiful thing, there are no barriers between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only barrier between us and Allah when we make dua is probably our sins. And if we can make istighfar and we can try and cleanse ourselves, then there is no barriers. And even when we have sins, we still have to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Him to forgive us. So it's really a constant connection of the slave of the creation with the Creator. It's a constant connection. And that is all we need to do whenever we are in any situation, whenever we have any need, whether it's a dunya need, it's an akhirah need, it's any kind of need. We need to start connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to communicate with Allah. And we need to find the best times to call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah descends during the last part of every night asking, is there anyone asking of me so I can give to him? Allah asks every single night, is there anyone asking of me so I can give him? Is there anyone supplicating to me so that I may respond to him? And so many of us, we lose these opportunities. And these are the golden opportunities that we need to take and we need to use. And I've told you a story, the same story previously, but I'm just going to mention it quickly. There was a man, he was he had been laid off from his work, and he was very anxious and very stressed, that how am I going to feed my family, how am I going to look after my household. This is a huge worry for any man, to lose a job. This is again a real story. And so he went to this this sheikh, and he's really stressed because he'd seen a few people and he'd been asking people, can you help me, can I give you my CV, can you help me find work? This is usually our primary response. Every time something goes wrong, we try and think of resources. We think, okay, who do I know who could help me with this? And this is just our natural response, most of us. So he's like been to a few people, been to a few contacts, friends, asking people, can you help me? Do you know anywhere that, I could apply for work, etc. So he goes to the scholar and he tells him that I'm really worried, So the scholar tells him, he says, I know, I have a solution for your problem, and I guarantee you it will help you, So he's really happy because he thinks now the scholar is about to give me a contact number of some prince or some guy in a high place, and I'm definitely going to get this job. And so he says to him, yes, tell me, what is it? And I'll act on it immediately. So the scholar says to him, he says, wake up half an hour before Fajr, or 20 minutes before Fajr, make wudu and pray 2 rakahs and ask Allah to help you. And so this guy, he actually becomes disappointed. And this is our attitude. When someone says to us that make dua, we actually just hold our heads and we think, I was hoping for a practical solution, for a tangible solution. But we don't realize this is the best solution to everything. So he goes back and he thinks, okay, what have I got to lose, I don't have any contacts. I'm not able to find work. So let me at least do this. So he goes back and he wakes up before Fajr and he says, I'll just do this, makes wudu, prays. In 2 weeks' time, he has 2 job offers and they are so amazing, both of them. He's confused. He doesn't know which one to take and which one to leave. So we just don't connect with Allah enough. We just don't ask Allah enough. And then we, sit with all our worries and our problems and we think, that why are we like overburdened with all this? So like I said, the main purpose of singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for asking is perfecting your tawheed. So when you ask other people, you can ask, there is permission to ask, and I will go through those rules next time maybe. But they do indicate a deficiency in your tawheed. Okay? So that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he took an oath from some of the Sahaba that you will never ask anybody for anything. And that's talking about dunya things, like I said, not ibadah. And some of the, the fruits of only asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will mention 5. One is that by only making dua to Allah, by only asking Allah, you are demonstrating that Allah is the only one who is worthy of worship, because dua is ibadah. So you are showing or demonstrating that Allah is the only one who is worthy of this ibadah. Okay? Allah is the only one worthy of being asked. Secondly, you recognize how weak you are, and how needy you are, and how dependent you are, and how poor you are, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rich, and He is powerful, and He is capable, and He is independent. So when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we lower ourselves and we elevate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more. The third thing that we get out of making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us for asking Him. As you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that if, that was for istighfar, but this is something that Allah likes. He likes us to ask Him, and you get rewarded for asking Him. The next point is number 4, which is Allah is pleased with the one who asks Him, and He is angry with the one who does not ask Him. So this is actually something that makes Allah happy when you ask Allah, and it's actually something that makes Him angry when you don't ask Him, and you're going around asking other people. And the last point is that the slave who asks Allah, Allah gives him his request in the dunya and in the akhirah. He gets the benefit of both places. And the person who doesn't ask Allah, Allah withholds from him in the dunya, and He deprives him in the akhirah as well. So really, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so critical. It is so important. And it is definitely an underrated ibadah. Maybe because we think, it's so easy, you just have to pick your hands up and speak to Allah. This couldn't be it. There must be more to it, or, we're not going to, this can't be a very rewarding ibadah because it's so straightforward and simple. But it is. It's a very, very highly rewarding ibadah. And it has effects which will, which spread across. And you will see the effects of those rewards in your life as you, increase in making dua. So next time, inshallah, I will talk about the rulings about asking from others. Actually, I'm just going to tell you now so that I can wrap up this topic, inshallah. So if you can just give me a few minutes. The main thing that I want to tell you is that there are 2 types of asking other people. One is clearly forbidden, and that is when you ask for things that only Allah can give you. So, any type of shirk, like for example, if you want guidance or hidayah and you ask someone that, can you please guide me, or, can you please give me hidayah? This is, of course, things related to the unseen, things related to your ibadah. You cannot ask anyone. That's clearly wrong. The thing that you can ask people are like dunya needs. Like, for example, let's say you are walking around in a new city and you're lost. So you go up to someone and say, excuse me, can you please tell me the way to such and such restaurant because I can't find it. That's asking someone, right? Or if you, for example, have become stranded for some reason and you need someone's help for something, so you stop someone and say, can you please help me change this flat tire. I can't do it on my own. Things like that. So I'm talking about dunya needs, your dunya needs that you ask for. So Ibn Uthaymeen, he said a very important and interesting thing. He said, even for those dunya needs that for which you need to ask another human being, you should primarily ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send you someone who can help you in this situation. So ultimately, your asking is still going back to Allah. Okay? So, for example, let's say you let's just take this example of, you're lost somewhere and you want to ask somebody, the way. So first ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Allah, please send me someone who can guide me correctly. And then you can go and, find someone and ask them. And what does this ultimately come down to? When your request is fulfilled, why do you think it is so important and stressed that you only ask Allah, and it's being repeated over and over again that ask Allah, don't ask anyone else? Anybody? So try and think of it in dunya terms, okay? Like, let's say, okay, that's very good. Yes, people want favors to be returned, and generally when you do something for someone, you do it with the intention of reciprocation. But that goes back to being like a benefit of asking Allah. When Allah does something for you, He's doing it just for your benefit. Yes, but when you are insisting on only asking Allah, what do you think is the main? It's related to Tawheed. What is the main benefit that you're getting from that? Why is it so important? That even that we should even tell our children that even if you have a dunya need, first ask Allah, and then fulfill your need. You see, yes, that's very good. Okay, so that's what I'm basically looking for. So somebody's answered in the chat box that your gratitude will be directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the thing that I was looking for is, when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will recognize that your need was fulfilled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather than, a lot of people, when they start, saying that, oh, I can do this myself, and I can do this, and I can do that, they start attributing those things to themselves, and they start thinking, oh, I'm so clever, that's why I got this, I got full marks on my test, and I'm so clever, that's why I passed my driving test the first time round, and I'm so clever, that's why I've got this amazing job, I passed the job interview in minutes because I'm so smart. So you see, you start attributing things to yourself, or you start attributing things to whoever has helped you. Like, you'll say, oh, such and such person, they're so resourceful, they're so helpful, they're so kind, I asked them and they did such and such for me. So you see, that recognition and that gratitude is being misdirected now. Whereas when you are used to just asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you direct that gratitude and that recognition that this request was fulfilled by Allah, even if it's a dunya request, because you asked Allah to send you somebody to help you with that thing. So for example, one of my girls, she had like a skin condition which was untreatable. And of course, when people say that, I always think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that there's a cure for everything, and we will find the cure, we just need to look for it. And so I tried various things, tried hijama, tried ruqya, reciting verses of the Quran, etc. And eventually, alhamdulillah, it completely went away, and she got cured, mashallah. And people kept asking me, that, how did you do this? What did you do? And ultimately, I said, I'm not sure. Ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just took this thing away. So, whenever something happens, although you might have used some asbab, right? You have used some cause and effect to get from point A to point B. But ultimately, you must remember that Allah enabled you to go from point A to point B. And it was ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who solved your situation for you. So this is one of the main ideas, I would say, which is linked to Tawheed, is, that when you ask, you only ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you attribute your shukr, your recognition, and the power for that thing to have been done and fulfilled, you attribute it all only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that, I think we have finished, inshallah, this section, and I will, inshallah, start a new section next time. So when it comes to, somebody had asked, asking people to make dua for you. So like I said, you can ask people for things, but primarily ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then if you ask somebody for something, whether it is for dua or for any other kind of, material favor, that should come under the umbrella of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But definitely try and avoid asking people and taking favors as much as possible. Especially when we say, oh, can you do this for me? Can you bring that for me? Can you take me here? Can you drop me there? Can you pick this up? Try as much as possible to avoid those kind of, requests, because this is something discouraged in our deen. And somebody had mentioned in the chat, it also interferes with your tawakkul, your dependence and your reliance should be entirely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I hope that is clear. If there is anything else that anybody wants to ask, you can ask. Otherwise, we will end the meeting. And next week, inshallah, there's a few question marks if we will have a meeting or not, but I will announce on the group, inshallah. But the next meeting is going to be again on Battle of Badr. We need to try and wrap up Battle of Badr, inshallah, but it's going to take a few durus to do that. So Jazakallahu Khairan for attending, and again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include you amongst those that He mentions in a gathering better than our gathering, because when you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions you in a gathering better than ours. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us our sins, as a blessing and a rahmah from Him for attending a gathering of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I hope we can all remember some of these things and try and inculcate some of these habits in ourselves, and then ultimately pass it on to our children, and so that they can also develop good habits, inshallah. And Allah make it easy for us to do that what is most pleasing to Him, and keep away from what is displeasing to Him, because we can only do these things with Allah's help. And this was a hadith that I have mentioned previously, but I wanted to mention it again. And that was the hadith of, I think it was Mu'adh ibn Jabal, where, the Prophet ﷺ taught him to say these words, and he said he never forgot them after that. Where he said, after every salah, you should say, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. That, oh Allah, assist me in remembering you, in being grateful to you, and in your, in worshipping you, in your ibadah. So we ask Allah's assistance in doing these things that we are doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See how dependent and needy and weak we are. We can't do anything without Allah's assistance. We can't even worship Him properly without His assistance. And sometimes I make dua to Allah for something, and I ask Allah to guide me in my dua, because without Allah's guidance, we're completely lost. So even in the dua, I ask Allah that Allah guides us to make the right dua, to ask Him for the right things. And that's how dependent we are on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and on His rahmah and His guidance. So I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to help us and guide us and assist us, so that we can stay on the straight path until we meet Him. Yes, so this is the hadith that I told you last time. Ya Mu'adh, Wallahi inni la uhibbuk. Wallahi inni la uhibbuk. فقال أوصيك يا معاذ لا تدعنا في دبر كل صلاة تقول اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. Oh Mu'adh, by Allah I love you. By Allah I love you. Then he said, I advise you, O Mu'adh, do not stop saying at the end of every prayer, O Allah, help me in remembering you, thanking you, and excelling in your worship. So this was the hadith that I was trying to mention. But yeah, I've mentioned this before as well, and I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assists us and helps us in beautifying our ibadah of Him and thanking Him and remembering Him. So if there's no other questions, inshallah, I will let you all get on with your evening. And Jazakallahu Khairan for attending. And inshallah, I hope to see you next week if there is a dars next week. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.